Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Barriers Now, where it all starts in the mind. Today, my guest is Stacey Vanthuyn, and she is a high performance coach and speaker hailing from Canada, where it's really cold. And we talked a little bit about the weather. And here I am down in Florida complaining about the cold and rain, and she's up there in the ice and snow. So I have nothing to complain about. But I'm really, truly grateful to have her on today. She's going to be talking about her four pillars that she has, which is vision, vibration, vulnerability, and being a victor over a victim. And when I read everything about her, all I could say was wow, because this is stuff that I kind of talk about too. And so I am truly just grateful for your time today, and I'm glad to have you on, and I can't wait to hear, a little bit about your story and what led you to doing what you do today. So go ahead and take it, Stacey.
Jerry, thank you. I'm grateful and honored to be here. And hi to all your audience. Honestly, as soon as I saw that your theme was breaking barriers and that it all starts in the mind, we knew that we're going to have perfect alignment. And when you talk
Yes.
about the weather, I guess that just shows that it's all about perspective. And I think
I
that that's such a
know.
critical thing to life, right? Is that
Yes, yes.
get locked into thinking one way. And, it's funny because I'm here in Canada, like you said, with the snow. And I got a note the other day from some friends in England that said, could you post some more pictures of snow? Because we never get it. And we really get excited about it. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of probably how you feel sometimes with the rain and the sun. And I'm like, I'll take it, Jody. Like, hi.
That's funny.
So it is, right? And I think that's just so much about life, is recognizing that so much is perspective, and that we can, regardless of our situation, find good in it. And it's just by kind
Yes.
of changing how we think. So I love
Yes.
what your mind, because I believe that there's a lot of people out there with this gap between knowing and doing. And we go and we acquire more knowledge, but yet our results never change. And we say, why? But it's really because, as you have in your title, it starts in the mind, and that
Mhm.
mind that drives our vibration, that ultimately drives our actions that get our results, is your subconscious mind. So my expertise is really helping people to rewrite their story, to create an environment where they thrive, to get out of kind of the rat race of like mediocrity, and that okay is enough, to say, no, we were born for greatness. We were born to live an abundant life. If you don't believe that, or if when I say that, that triggers something, that's just because that's old limiting beliefs and past
Right.
conditions that brought us. So really, to override that, we have to start to reprogram the subconscious mind. And that's where I just get so excited to talk about and help people, because
Yes.
if you do that, that's the primary cause. You won't get permanent results.
Oh, that is so true. That's good. What you just said is so good. It's a lot of effort, and I think that's what a lot of people need to understand. It's you don't just wake up one day and everything's all good. You have to be willing to put in the effort, but wow, the blessings are just limitless when you actually put the effort in.
100%, and that's where people say, well, why do you need a coach? Like, I went to a speaker, I had a book, or, things like that. Is that those will, inspire us and motivate us for a while, but motivation isn't enough. It's really about having that accountability, and coaches see something in you that maybe you don't even see in yourself. So I know
Mm-hmm.
for myself, it wasn't until I invested in a coach that I really saw the transformations happen. And I was blessed that my first mentor was Bob Proctor. So I actually
Nice.
had a really tough week last week, as many of you know, or I know this may be aired
Mm-hmm.
later, but Bob transitioned to his next stage of his journey. And it wasn't sadness
Right.
necessarily that he had passed, because he'd lived a fulfilled life, and one where he lived each and every day on purpose and impacting so many millions of people. But when I would tear up of thinking about it, it was because I was overwhelmed with gratitude for having my path cross with his. Because if they didn't, I don't know if I would be doing what I am today and even speaking with you. And
Mm.
so it just brought me to like a place of gratitude of how important one person can be in changing another person's life. And it's
Yes.
just overwhelming a little bit for me. And, I think both of our goals in life is to be that person that when someone's given up on themselves or they're feeling stuck or they have this gap between knowing, is to like reach out and say, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can borrow some of the belief I have in you until you develop it in yourself.
Exactly.
Promise
Yes.
you, you'll thrive, right? So it's
Yeah.
really what I love to do.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, what started your journey in this?
Yeah,
Because I know I've read a little bit, but I want to make sure that the audience understands, kind of where you came from before you
sure.
started this journey you're on now.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent over 25 years in corporate.
Mm.
I feel like where my journey came to what I'm doing now is that let's try and summarize it as best I can. I've always been someone with a ton of energy. I've always been
Nice.
somebody that loves to like inspire and empower people. In fact, as like early as 14, I was teaching swimming lessons and then went into aerobics. I laugh, I'll age myself because the first time I ever wore a thong was on the outside of my spandex. Uh, and so
We're almost the same age. Come on.
I
We're
know.
not that
And
old.
don't tell me that we didn't
That is
wear
so
like
funny.
the little leg warmers and our Jane Fonda headband. That was totally me teaching aerobics. And
Oh
but
man.
I had a really supportive family, and my they always I had sport. I know we have that in common, and I feel that that really built up a lot of my characteristics as far as teamwork and value
Hmm.
and being disciplined in certain arenas and stuff like that. But it was always important for me and my parents that I went to university, that I got a good degree. You wanted to get a job that would save for your pension, and ultimately I always
Yes.
want to be a mom, and so one that I could save for my kids education because my parents had helped me with mine. And I just lived a middle class life that we got to
Hmm.
go on a trip or two a year. And I just thought to myself, as long as I get to do that, my life will be complete. And I grew up in Catholic faith. And so I had some, in hindsight, some restrictions being placed on me as far as I never wanted to be rich. I felt like that was selfish people.
Hmm.
I never want not to be satisfied with what I had, because I always was told that you're so much luckier than most people, which in
Right.
fact true. But then I started to be ashamed of when I wanted more. I also
Mm.
started to be ashamed of because I had this energy that it would attract certain things. So then ultimately it was stereotyped as, oh, you always have to be the center of attention. And so I started to
Yes.
like hide that.
Mm.
And, not even really knowing. I think it was more like subconsciously hiding it.
Hmm.
But also because I had the dreams of going to university and getting a good job, I did achieve those things. And, and here I found myself now working full time, around 30. I still hadn't met, I dated lots, but I hadn't gotten that other goal of being a mom. And I laugh at this. I'll just share this. I haven't actually shared this out on public, but my dad at 30 gave me raisins in my card and told me my
Oh
eggs
wow.
were dying. So to hurry up, like they were ready for the next phase of their lives.
Oh
Honestly, I
my
have the best.
goodness.
He's like, I watched Oprah and you have a certain number of eggs and you like, and I was like, oh my gosh, dad, like you so want a grandchild that you're telling
Oh
your
my.
daughter to have children. He's like, yeah. I said, you know what? It's okay, dad, because I really want to be a mom. And if I'm still single by the time I'm 35, I'll have a kid. He said, okay. Well, wouldn't you know, in between that time, I met a man. And within like, I don't know, pretty quick, like a year and a half or so, we were engaged. And within a couple of years, I was pregnant.
Oh
And
wow.
that's another thing, like that thoughts become things. I never ever thought that there would be a challenge with like having any pregnancy issues or anything. And there wasn't,
Hmm.
like, it was just easy and I loved it. But I found myself when my first daughter was 3, that I really wasn't happy. And
Mm.
yet, I wanted to have 2 because it was also important ingrained in me that if you have 1, you must have 2 as if you're able, and they needed a
Yeah.
best friend. So I got pregnant again. And I remember being pregnant with my second and crying and thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I'm stuck. I'm going to be in this relationship. I didn't know anyone that was divorced. I didn't come from a family of divorce. We got to make this kind of work. But after my second, and seeing that I was doing everything anyways, and I have a really good relationship with my ex, so it's not that, but it wasn't what we needed. We were not we weren't in love. We were roommates, living and surviving together, right? And so what ended up happening was, when my oldest was 6 and my youngest was 3, I left him. And I guess that was really the start of some things, because I had now been 40. I had broken through the barrier of, I must live this life. And because I had strong parents and loving parents, I really didn't want my girls to see a relationship where there wasn't love between them.
Right.
And where it felt like eggshells. And so I left with the girls and kept working, and just picked up shit again and just kept going, and never really ignoring it, and just always knowing, like, I always believed in God. I always believed in my angels. I always knew that I would be okay, but I didn't know the how. But when I was about 41, then somebody asked me, what are your dreams, Stacey? And still, I was living like my middle class life. I was working. My girls were, doing well on the outside. I was doing well. I was active in sports still and running. But I said, like, my dreams, I don't know, that the kids become productive members of society, and that, they get a good job and they thrive. And he's like, so that's a great dream for your kids, but what about you?
Yeah.
And it was kind of in that moment that I had this epiphany of, like, I don't know. And it was also in that moment where I started to look back at all the dreams I had, they'd come to fruition. I wanted to have a good job. I wanted to be secure and live this middle class life where I could take my kids. I wanted to have good friendships around me, I mean, the only one that really hadn't had true is I did want to be married and in a happy relationship, and I wasn't, but it was fine, right? Like, I was just strong. I've been a strong woman my whole life. So I knew that the girls and I would be okay. But it was just in that moment that I realized, like, I don't have a dream for myself anymore. And that's maybe why I'm not feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
And it was then that I really just dove into the realm of personal development. And I realized that up until that time, I'd been really an unconscious competent, which I think most of us are, truthfully.
Yes.
And I was ignorant in not realizing that the reason I had achieved what I had was because of the thoughts that I thought, and because I believed it. And because I believed it and I felt it, it came to fruition. And yet now I was afraid of dreaming again and having these goals because of the society conforming, like me conforming to society, in fear of, like, oh, well, what will others think? And, what if I invest in myself and it doesn't work? And the fear of poverty. And then, just the fear of failure. But that's, I guess, when like I said, my paths crossed with Bob Proctor, and he's like, have you been told that it's better to be safe than sorry? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you're
So we
playing
got
it
told
safe,
that our
you're
whole
not
lives.
winning, right?
That's it.
So,
But we never learned that, we never, and I mean, I can definitely say in my upbringing, that wasn't, it was like, go to school, go to more school, go get a job, go to more school. And so that's what I ended up doing my whole life. It was just like searching for the significance in life. And
exactly.
oh my gosh. And then trying to find it, but you can't find it if you're just being safe.
You can't find it if you're being safe, and you can't find it if you're, like, worried more about what others think than your own thoughts. So, like, even
Yes.
myself, like, I felt just like like when you build those houses of cards and you have one layer and the layer and the layer. And I knew,
Yep.
especially in my marriage part, that if I go down, we all go down.
Mm.
And I am not going to go down. And
Yeah.
so I knew enough to get out, but I didn't realize that that came from a place of unworthiness and trusting myself. Because if I would have been worthy, I would have been able to set better boundaries. I would have been able to recognize and get myself out of situations. I would have been able to continue to show my energy regardless of what others thought, right? I would have
Right.
shown up my true authentic self. And even through the journey of personal development and growth, they say, well, just be your authentic self. Well, I've been trying to hide that person for so long. I didn't even know who she is, right? Like I still
Exactly.
find that out every day,
Yeah.
more of who I am and evolving and becoming, right? And so I think like my story, where I hope it resonates with your audience and encourages people, is to say, you may be running a race right now that you thought you wanted to sign up for, and you may even be winning in that race. But that doesn't mean you have to stay there. If it's not
Right.
filling your soul, if it's not igniting your passion, if you don't wake up inspired every day, that you live for the weekends. I was living for the weekends. I would numb my feelings with wine. I smoked weed, and I just it let my inner fire just be okay with that moment. And so I would just say that it's time to break through, and that you don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough, because we can change in a state of suffering and pain, or we can recognize, awake, reach out for help with someone like a coach like yourself or myself, and then making that change and developing those tools in a state of inspiration and joy. And really that's my message to people is, why wait?
Yeah. And you guys, if I can offer a little bit just to piggyback off of that, yeah, don't wait for the breakdown.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's what I did. And it's no fun. It's no fun. And I've had a few of them before. And it's funny, I had another guest on and we were talking about how you hit rock bottom, but then you find out you can go a little bit lower. It's not quite the bottom yet. But either way it goes, just remember not to give up. If anything, don't
Never
give
give
up.
up, and that you are successful the moment you decide to do different. It's not like what you get, it's who you become in the journey. And that, the
Hmm.
reality is that, spoiler alert, we'll all hit adversities. Even when you decide to make
Yes.
this change, you're going to hit adversity. The difference is you have tools now. You have a belief in yourself.
Hmm.
You put yourself in a place of uncomfort and have gone through that. So that the next time you're uncomfortable, that you can go through that too. It's
Right.
about developing and understanding that increased awareness and understanding of yourself. But if you don't develop it and then you do hit these challenges, sometimes you see then those challenges as reasons to stop or signs
Hmm.
it's not, versus recognizing that failure is only failure when you stop. Anything else is just temporary defeat, a lesson to be learned,
I love
and
that.
keep going, right?
Yeah, I love that. I always say that too. Like we're not failures unless we quit. When
Yeah.
we quit, that's when we fail. If we don't
Yeah.
quit, we haven't failed. We just learn lessons along the way. It's
Yeah.
okay.
And we bring more of ourselves to the surface. Like the
Yeah.
whole intention of life, I believe, is to grow. And that,
Hmm.
with the law of vibration where everything moves, nothing rests, we're either creating or disintegrating. So a lot of people are like, well, I think that was the thing for me too. Is like, what, really? 43? Like, this is as good as it gets. I got to tap out
Yeah.
now and just freaking pack my bags. Be like, well, and then live in the past, remembering that.
Yes.
No, hell to the no. We're
Oh.
not going to do that, right? So our best lives and our best days are to come, but you have to
Yes.
believe that. If we consistently live in the past, then we just get the predictable future. And people are like, well,
Yeah.
I want to change my results. And it's like, well, to do different, you got to get different. And that means you need to take accountability for what has gotten you here,
Hmm.
decide what it is that you want. That was for me. What is my new dream going to be?
Yeah.
Have that intention, back it up with a feeling to raise your vibration to get onto the same frequency of that which you want, and then let go and let God, right? Like we,
Yes.
we
That's
don't
huge.
need to know the how. We just need
Yes.
to know what we want and live from that place and trust and have faith that it will be there, and it will. And, you talk to any successful person, they'll say that. The people that only
Yeah.
say that it's not true are the people who aren't living their fulfilled life, you
That is
know?
very true. That is very true. And I love what you said about, just releasing, because that's one of the things that I've had to do too, is just learn how to let go, and yeah, like I don't know what's gonna happen in 5 minutes, and that's okay. Like, but it's taken so long to get there, and so that's why I think it's important for people to understand. I think and I actually teach people about time management and planning ahead and stuff like that. But what I teach them is plan ahead for what you cannot foresee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because life is going to happen and it's okay. And it's just, planning ahead a little bit so that way you can be a little bit more prepared when those things happen, because they're going to happen. And it's
Yeah.
okay. It's just we have to be able to get through them.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes when people stay too attached to the outcome, that's when those things happen and you feel like you have
Hmm.
to react to it versus respond. Whereas
Yes.
if you fell in love with the journey, fell in love with the process, and recognize that the ups and the downs, it's the ebbs and flows of life, the law of rhythm, that it will just happen, that it's
Hmm.
not throw you off track. It's not there to test you, although I mean, might be to see how strong your faith is and what you go, but
Yeah.
it is just a part of it. And then it's really to fall in love with that journey, and that the expectation you have to let go of. Because when we cling too hard to that, again, that's not, like you said, not letting go and just releasing it. And it
Hmm.
almost causes resistance between where we're at and that which we desire. So,
Yeah.
recognize and go within and say, what am I doing that could possibly cause resistance? Why do I think what I think? Why do I act why I act?
Right.
We want this stuff, but we don't want to do the inner work. And yet, in order to reprogram our subconscious mind, we have to understand what's gotten us to where we're at and what are those paradigms. And paradigm is just your habitual way of living. So some of your
Hmm.
limiting beliefs that may no longer serve us. And then those are the ones that we would want to start to uproot, weed out of the garden, to start planting more beliefs that are in alignment with that which you desire.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Let's talk a
It's
little bit about your 4 pillars. I love that they all start with a V, and we talked a little bit. We were kind of joking around before we started recording about how your last name starts with a V and your pillars start with a V. But your four pillars are vision, vibration, vulnerability, victor versus victim. We touched a little bit about the vision and the vibration, a little bit about the vulnerability. The victor versus victim, that one's a huge one, because like I said, I've kind of gone through that a lot too. And so I love to be able to kind of share that with other people, is how important it is to get rid of that victim mindset and begin to adopt more of a victor mindset.
Yeah. And I approach it from this, like, we've been conditioned to live from our external senses, from what we
Mhm.
can see, taste, touch, smell, hear, and feel, right? And although those are important because they attach our body to the external world, we live on 3 planes of existence. We're spiritual beings, we have an intellect, and we're in this body. We'll move in and move out. It allows us to do it things, right? And our
Mhm.
body is almost our conscious mind because it responds to the thoughts, the self image, and the beliefs that are in our subconscious mind. So often I find when people are, oh, woe is me, or this always happens, or they allow one experience to determine their personality because they
Mhm.
let that experience move into almost like, um, a moment in time that goes into a temperament, that then goes into a mood. They never really deal with it. They continue to live in the past, think of themselves as a victim, only going on their external senses. It becomes a personality. You're like, what happened to them? And they're like, oh, 6 years ago, she got a divorce. Like, really? Or
Right.
whatever the case may be, right? So when it comes to becoming your own victor in life, you have to recognize that we are the creators of our lives. We create from the inside out. That just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. As soon as you have the thought, it is here. So when we can take accountability for the fact that we've created what is around us, but we have the power to create something new by using our mental faculties. So our mental faculties are our will, our
Mm-hmm.
ability to hold, like focus. A will is like, a will to your goal is kind of like a glass where what's it called? A magnifying glass is to the sun, right? Like you could just like
Oh, yeah,
hone
yeah,
in
yeah.
on that, right? And just hone
Right.
in. So will, your perception, we talked about that at the beginning and how important changing perception is, your
Mm-hmm.
intuition. I like to say, when we pray, we're praying to God. When we listen to our intuition, that's our soul's whisper, God praying, like telling us, right? But so
Yes.
often we ignore that intuition. But and why? Because we're worried about the
We're
external world.
programmed, right?
Yeah. So pay attention to your intuition, your reason, our ability to think. Like we were gifted with the ability to think, our imagination to create what we want, and ultimately our memory. And when we start to use these gifts that we are brought, or as Bob would call it, their magic in our mind, we can really become the victor in our lives because we recognize that we create what we want.
Mm.
And so you start to use your imagination to think of what it is that you want, to visualize it, to see. That's why, visualization is so important. Affirmations are so important. Writing
Right.
down. Writing causes thinking. Thinking causes feelings. Feelings cause vibration, which puts your body into action to get new results. And then when we can live from that place, then we can elevate ourselves into the vibration and the frequency of what we want and start to attract it to become the victor of our lives. So it's all within our control. But in order to do that, we first, I believe, have to start taking accountability and then knowing what it is that we want.
Yes.
I study with Dr. Joe too. And so we do a lot of meditations.
Nice.
And it's all about, um, anticipating the feeling. Because one thing to have an intention, but it's feeling is where the magic happens, right? So you almost in your meditations, things want to anticipate the feeling before the experience either happens, because our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So there's two ways to reprogram our subconscious mind, right? One, through an emotional impact, something happens, a trauma event, something like
Right.
that, and instantly you're changed. The other way is through constant spaced repetition. So you want to constantly think of what it is that you want. Adopt that feeling, think of what it would feel like to be free, to be, whatever it is that you want, joyful, happy, overwhelmed with gratitude. I mean, excited for
Yes.
each and every day and inspired. And you live there and your subconscious mind believes it is there, right? And then all of a sudden that sets you up in different vibration. One day you're like, holy smokes, I'm actually living my dream. And you can, as
Yes.
Steve Jobs says,
Yes.
join the dots going forward, but you can when you look back, right?
Right.
So, that's how I got here. But that's why those, having a strong morning routine and doing those and visualizing, having your goal card somewhere handy. I was going to reach over and grab mine where you can read it all the time. Is so important
Mm-hmm.
because it's to reprogram that subconscious mind through constant space
Right.
repetition.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, I have vision boards, and that's kind of my thing, because it's like I'll look at my vision boards every day. It's the same type of thing. It's that for me, I'm a very visual person. So that visual representation helps me out tremendously. But, what you're saying is so powerful, because we have to adopt the mindset before we get there. And that's where my downfall was personally, where it was like I struggled with adopting that mindset because I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't there. And,
Yeah,
and so now I'm realizing, like, okay, well, if I don't adopt that mindset, I'm never going to get there.
that's right. It's like you don't wait for like happiness on the outside to feel happy. You don't wait for the money to
Right.
feel like you are. My favorite quote, I just love this. I mean, yeah, it just is so much. Someone asked Van Gogh one time, how do you paint such beautiful paintings? And he said, I see my dream and then I paint my dream. And I just love that for like
Mhm.
representation of our lives. Like if you don't know what it is that you want, if you can't see that image on the screen of your mind, then you lead yourself up to being a wanderer or susceptible to your external senses, to what other people think that you should do. And yet
Yeah.
we are the creators of our life. Our life's a masterpiece. So know what it is that you want and then live there and see that. And, you know, and anytime you have a thought that is in alignment or says you can't, or that you're an imposter or whatever that can be, you just reject it, because
Yes.
just because you thought something at one time doesn't make it true.
Right.
And then again, like when I said to you around vibration, the reason I love those topics is because it also goes to the universal laws. And I think that when we understand the universal laws, we can really start to understand why we think certain things or why it is. And, you know, we have the law of duality, which says hot and cold, left and right, up and down, positive, negative. So if you knew this, and once you do know it, there's no going back. If you have a positive thought, you say, I want to do something new, you should be prepared that all the reasons why you can is going to come in next. Because you thought of something strong, right? Yeah. But you just have to recognize that and say, no, faith or fear. I'm no longer going to let fear hold me back. And fear is really, like, I believe, the absence of love. If you've read the book of miracles and stuff, it really talks to that. And that, you know, when we don't have that fear, when we do have that fear, that's just untrue thinking. Right. So like, lean into love, lean into believing in you, and to knowing that you are part of a universal mind. And whether you're faith-based or not, theology or science will all intersect to say, thoughts become things. We're energy, and it all responds the same way. So when we know that, and we can live in resonance with that, that's when really I believe the magic happens, and we start to attract and create the world that we desire.
So true.
I get so excited
about it. I know. I can tell. I love it. Well, and you mentioned Dr. Joe, so I'm assuming that's Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Sorry.
So I have a few of his books. So anybody out there listening, I highly, highly encourage you to get some of those books. I actually have a good friend whose mom, they're all friends, and so she gave me the books that I should get. And so I got some of those and, you know, read them. And what you said about the science and the faith intersecting, he talks about that, you know, and how all of this really aligns, and he talks about that freely in his books, and I really respect that. And I think it's important for people to understand that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he is brilliant. You know, I met him after Bob and reading like powers like Neville Goddard and all of the greats, right? Like, I mean, these books I just have them out all the time, whether it's Neville, Earl Nightingale, Genevieve Bertrand, you know, James Allen is another one. I wrote the chapter of Serenity, like 63 days straight. I mean, it's okay to have energy, but you also have to have focus. So we had to work through some of this.
But that balance thing.
And so it was easier for me to bite into theology because I had a faith-based background and believed in God. But I know that some people may not, but it doesn't mean that it works differently for them. And so then when I started Dr. Joe and his like thoughts on quantum physics and how the quantum works and everything, it was like these light bulbs that were going off in my head, because I was like, well, that's why they say this in theology, and that's why. So it proves it through science, you know. And I would also challenge if
I have that
the first book you read it, maybe not start with Becoming Supernatural. It's pretty deep. But like Breaking the Habit of You,
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, that was the one that was recommended to read first, because I actually had that one. And like I said, my friend's mom who knew him, she said, that's not the first one you should read. She was the one who told me that.
It's pretty deep. It can be a little bit of a difficult read at times. But once you've started to study his meditations and you know, I guess for me, I've gone to a few of his conferences, and like we meditate all, like before Dr. Joe, I teach yoga too, and I would be like, 5 minutes shavasana, right? Like, or Bob has maybe a 12-minute meditation that I was like, wow. Honestly, one morning we and his conference, if you can ever go, I mean, it's very good it's an incredible experience. But the pineal gland, so if you're thinking of chakras, your seventh is your pineal gland, right? And so it's the eye to the mystic. And we start that day at 4 a.m. And because your gland is the highest,
that's what I usually
there
wake
you
up.
go. I'm gonna get at 4:32. I wake up. We were like in the conference room at 4, and we laid down to meditate. We opened her eyes, it was 8:15,
Oh,
like a 4-hour
wow.
meditation. Like it's not
Were you
like,
meditating or sleeping?
well, I think there was probably times that you went in, but I knew I was down for a while, but I never would have. But that's all about the
That's
quantum. You become
awesome.
no place, no one, no time, nobody, right?
Yeah,
And so time, so you don't even really know. Time's a man-made construct. So it
right.
goes to there and how we transform from matter to energy. Particle to wave. And it is just such an incredible experience. So for me, coming back from Dr. Joe's events, I've never missed a day of meditation. And how
Mhm.
I got to that place was, if I truly believe thoughts become things. So I think a lot of us say that. And I'm sure people in your audience are listening say, yeah, of course, thoughts become things.
Yeah.
But is that a conscious thought or a subconscious thought? Because
Mm.
if it is truly something you believe on a subconscious level, why?
Uh-oh. I think I lost her. Oh no. Stacey, come back. Uh-oh, I think I might have lost her. You guys, I'm gonna have to have her back on because I mean, as you can just tell, she has so much energy. There's so much alignment.
Oops, sorry.
Okay. So I really hope for anybody out there listening, we just had like a Wi-Fi lapse, I think, in internet.
Oh,
So this is the
uh,
beauty of technology, right? So technology is great until it doesn't work. So I'm really hoping
I
that we didn't lose any of that. I'll find out afterward. But I think we
feel
left off because you kind of just froze, but you were talking about how you were able to meditate now. So we'll
Oh,
just
okay,
continue
okay,
there. I
okay.
probably missed all the rest of what you were saying after that, right?
It's okay. I was like, why am I she so quiet? And I didn't really realize. But where I was
Yeah.
going with that, that's just spirit talking, is that did you hear about the, like, if we truly believe thoughts are things and like at a subconscious level, then why would
Yes.
we ever miss a day in intentionally creating, right?
Yeah, I think
So
that's where it kind of left off right there.
yeah, so that's really all I was saying, is that, like, if we focus, like, the universe is indifferent. It gives you, it's like a genie, it comes in, like, your wish is my command. So
Yeah.
if, right, if you've been thinking negative thoughts and stuff, it will give you more negative thoughts
Right.
and situations. And I was saying that's why gratitude is so key in living a fulfilled life and developing
Yeah.
change, because if you look for good, more good will come.
Yeah.
And so if if we truly believe our thoughts become things, then you should never let a negative thought come into your mind. So you just
That's
reject
good.
that.
Yeah.
Reject, get out, get out. And then focus on what it is
Yeah.
that you like. I literally like, hi, tennis racket, right? And
But the key to that, I just want to throw this out there because again, this is, this is stuff that we've all experienced. I think the key to that is being aware of those negative thoughts because the problem is a lot of times we're not even aware of them. And so we can't reject them because we're not even aware they're there.
they're
And
normal.
that's when, right, and that's when, it can start seeping in and really start taking us down. And so I think
Love that.
that first part, and I love what you said earlier about, working with someone like, there's so many people who want you to succeed, right? Like, and just believing that, because I think we're also programmed to not trust anybody. It's like that trust factor, and well, you're just gonna take advantage of it. No, that's not the type of person I am actually. And I think people just need to open their minds up to the fact that there are some amazing people like you, like me, like so many people out there, right? That actually want you to succeed because we've been there and we've seen the other side and we don't want you to be there too much longer, right? So if we can help you get out of that, then that's what it's all for.
I love that. I love that you're opening this conversation here, because there's some really huge keys. One is the open mindedness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that, there's other ways. And like I said, just because you had thought in the past doesn't make it true today. So
Right.
really being open, get curious. Like, don't just accept what I say, get curious about it, learn, read
Yes.
yourself, right? See,
Yes.
reflect at your own life. Like, you think there's a reason when you wake up late out of bed and you're feeling anxious and stressed, that like, and you bump your toe and then you go upstairs and then you're making,
Like one
you're,
thing after the other, right?
you spill your coffee and you think that's just coincidence. Like you're
No.
actually on that level of frequency, right? That just
Yeah.
more of the negative comes. So I love that you say around open-mindedness. The other piece that I really I'm grateful for you mentioning, because sometimes I can get so caught up in the woo-woo and people are like, Stacey, I'm not even there. I don't even get what you're saying.
Right.
Is that, um, when you say some people have been conditioned just to think negatively, I think this is so important. This is where, like, I believe we bring on a lot of the dis/ease on ourselves by the thoughts we
Hmm.
think. And, you know, Dr. Joe goes so eloquently into talking about this, because he talks about how, you know, a lot of us live, I don't know, 50, 60, 70% in this state of fight or flight.
Hmm.
And when our bodies are in this constant state of stress, it gives us a ton of cortisol. And the
Yes.
cortisol is actually the killer of it in our body, right? It causes a lot of dis/ease. And I hyphenate that word because the body um, in its normal state should just be at ease.
Hmm.
Dis/ease not a normal state for us, but we've been conditioned to think, oh yeah, you know, I'm 43. I should be starting to lose my sleep. No, I shouldn't be able to run anymore. I shouldn't this, I shouldn't that. And we like
Right.
excuses for it versus recognizing that this is happening to us because of the thoughts we think. So like
Right.
when we think of like fear, that leads to doubt, to worry, to anxiety, all feelings that are suppressed within the body, giving the cortisol, leading to depression, dis/ease, ultimately disintegration. So
Hmm.
what he says, and he talks about a lot, and what we'd work through in coaching is saying, okay, well, if my thoughts have brought this on, then I can have the power to unthink it by flipping
Hmm.
to the opposite. And the opposite of worry, doubt, fear, understanding, and faith, and well being, and feelings that get expressed, that gain acceleration for a body to be at ease into creating. And so, what happens though, if we are constantly living, replaying the trauma or the crappy parts that have happened into our lives, or reliant on social media and the news, then we
Yeah.
don't almost even feel like our normal self until I look at my phone, get a dose of bad, which is going
Hmm.
to drive my cortisol up, right?
Yeah.
Because I instantly then put myself into a state of stress. But it's that cortisol that's made me feel like myself again.
Right.
And so that's where even with coaches, we can help you recognize to say, you know, that's just one way of living, but it doesn't
Right.
have to be that. And instead of looking at your phone first thing or thinking about the past, that's where you start to have your vision boards, why you start to
Hmm.
write your affirmations, to be grateful of what you want, because that puts you in a higher vibrational state that then allows the
Right.
dopamine, the oxytocin, you know,
Yes.
the endorphins, the melatonin,
Yes.
serotonin to start kicking in. And then you get addicted to those good chemical feelings versus the cortisol, which pulls down. So I think that that's
Yeah.
what gets a lot of people stuck, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what you said about, the dis slash ease, I like that dash in between because, a lot of diseases come from stress,
Yeah.
overwhelm.
Yeah.
We're literally taking ourselves out,
Yeah.
like one of the things that I'm going to be teaching on this week, as a matter of fact, is how to lower your blood pressure without medication.
Love
It's
it.
it's that morning routine. It's that, what do you do throughout the day? What are you involved in? Are you taking some time for yourself? And these are
Yeah.
all things that we all have to practice. I didn't just wake up knowing how to do that stuff, right? Like it's
No,
and so it's just taking that first, being open to taking that first step. So
I,
that
I love
openness is huge.
Cody. It's like practice. Same with meditations. If you can't get your mind to wander, it's just a practice. You just go back and
Yeah.
practice it. It's
Yeah.
progress over perfection, right? It's,
Exactly.
you know, so on many of us too, we've been conditioned that if it doesn't happen tomorrow or within the time span that we want, that it
Right.
doesn't, that it's working. And, you know, like with vulnerability and stuff, where I want to change a little bit of it is to say, you know, we're so okay with saying we're brave and we're strong and
Hmm.
these power words, but you don't get brave. You don't get to be strong without being vulnerable. Vulnerable is when you get out of this stance, get yourself onto the field and say, I'm going to play. I'm going to go after my dream. Does that mean I'm going to fail? Does that mean I'm going to fall down or potentially get challenged? Yes. And failing as in the word of temporary defeat, not
Right.
quitting. But yes, it does. But that is allowing you to play. Like you then like are living. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't, back to saying, it wasn't, life wasn't meant to just stay safe and sit on your couch, watch
Yeah.
the Netflix. Sorry, and I don't mean
Yeah.
to insult that, but like
No,
it's
it's
like
true though.
more to that, right? You
Yeah.
know, and I look at how many people are our ages and they're like have already like checked themselves out.
I
And
know.
yet, you know, look at Bob. He was almost 88 years old. He had the energy of somebody like half his age. He lived and he did what he loved until the day that he died.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so important for all of us to live a happy, fulfilled, more prosperous, wealthy, healthy life is really keeping an open mind and asking yourself, what is it that I want? And when we can raise our awareness and understanding of that, we see the infinite potential within ourselves and we really can start to like create the life that you're born to live.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Oh. Oh no. Did she leave again? Ah. Well, this has been one for the books, you guys. Wow. I'm just going to go ahead and finish it off. I want you guys to please connect with Stacey. Her website is it's just www.raiseyourresults.ca. Okay, so remember she is in Canada, so it's .ca. Again, raiseyourresults.ca. You guys, today we talked about vision, vibration, vulnerability, victor versus victim. I wish she had been able to stay on here because I was going to say Stacey V and it reminds me of Gary V. But she's just truly phenomenal from what I can tell so far. And I'm so grateful for the connection and to be able to just continue, hopefully, build this friendship out with her. You guys, please connect with her. I really hope and pray that this show blessed your life in some way, shape, or form. And if it did, please share with others. All right. So God bless. Thank you so much for being here and have a truly blessed day. Remember, subscribe, follow, and share. All right. Have a great one. Again, this is Jody Watkins, Breaking Barriers Now, and we will see you next time.